You've definitely heard of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I mean, it's one of the biggest self-help books of all time. But here's the thing. Before you even get to habit number 1, there's this powerful foundation you absolutely have to understand. And that's what we're going to dig into today. The philosophy, the real why behind the what. Okay, let's get into it.
So let's just start with a question that I think we've all asked ourselves at some point. You know the drill, right? You try a new productivity hack, you read a motivational book, you feel on top of the world for like a week, and then poof, you're right back where you started. Why does this keep happening?
Well, according to Covey, the answer is pretty simple. We are completely drawn to the idea of a quick fix. We're always looking for those surface-level solutions, the little tips, tricks, and techniques that promise a huge result right now, but they don't actually fix the real underlying issues. Covey actually breaks this whole problem down into 2 competing ideas. For a long time, the big thing was the personality ethic. This is all about your public image, how you communicate, having a positive attitude, all that surface stuff. But he argues that's all temporary. The real secret sauce is the character ethic. This is built on deep, foundational principles like integrity and courage. You know, it's the difference between just painting over a rusty spot and actually fixing the metal underneath. Okay, so if the quick fix is the problem, then what in the world is the solution? Well, Covey calls it the inside-out approach, and this is the core idea for making any kind of change that actually sticks. The idea here is simple, but it's really profound when you think about it. If you want a happier marriage, a better career, more money, those are all external results, right? The inside-out approach says you just can't get there by trying to manipulate those outside things. The work, the real work, has to start inside you first. So what does working from the inside out even look like? It means we stop obsessing over the results and we start focusing on where those results come from. We're talking about our core beliefs, our values, our deep-seated character, and really just our level of self-awareness. This is where the real magic happens. Covey makes this great analogy. He says that just like gravity is a natural law in the physical world, you can't argue with it, there are principles like fairness, integrity, and honesty that are natural laws in the human world. The character ethic is all about aligning ourselves with these unbreakable, timeless rules. You just can't cheat them. All right, so if we need to work from the inside out, how do we actually do it? Well, the very first step is to understand how we're seeing the world in the first place. And that means we have to take a look at our mental map. The key concept here is the paradigm. Now, it sounds like a big, fancy word, but think of it this way. It's your personal map of reality. It's not reality itself. It's just your perception of it. And this map, it dictates everything, how you think, how you feel, and what you do. This quote just nails it, doesn't it? I mean, 2 people can look at the exact same situation and see completely different things. Why? Because their internal paradigms, their mental maps, are different. Our perception is really just a reflection of ourselves. And here is the big payoff. If you want more than just tiny little changes in your life, if you want a real, honest-to-goodness breakthrough, you can't just change what you do. You have to go deeper. You have to change the paradigm, the map that your behavior comes from. That's what we call a paradigm shift. So once we get a handle on our paradigms, there's actually a pretty clear path we can follow. Covey lays out this framework for growth, a journey that moves us through 3 really distinct stages. He calls this the maturity continuum. We all start out in dependence, right? As kids, we rely on others for everything. The paradigm is you. Then our whole society pushes us toward independence, self-reliance. The paradigm becomes I. But Covey says there's a higher level, and that's interdependence, where we realize the paradigm of we lets us achieve way more together than we ever could alone.
And this is a really important point. Being independent is awesome. It's a huge step. But true effectiveness, especially in the world we live in today, comes from knowing that we need each other. Interdependence isn't weakness. It's a choice that only truly independent people can make.
So we have our path, this maturity continuum. But what's the engine that actually moves us along it? Well, the answer is in how Covey defines a habit. And trust me, it's a lot more than just something you do on autopilot. First up, you need the knowledge. This is the what to do and the why to do it. It's the theory. You have to understand the principle behind the action. But just knowing something isn't enough, right? You also need the skill.
This is the practical side, the how to do it. It's actually developing the ability to put what you know into practice. And finally, the third and maybe the most important part is desire. This is the motivation, the want to do it. This is the engine. Because without desire, all the knowledge and skill in the world are pretty much useless. And here it is, all together. When you combine knowledge, skill, and desire, that's when you get a true habit. This is so key. If you're trying to build a new habit and it's just not sticking, chances are one of these three things is missing. You need all three to make it work. And this brings everything full circle. The 7 habits, they're not just a random list of good ideas. Each one is specifically designed to build these 3 components, the knowledge, the skill, and the desire, to create these powerful, principle-centered habits that move you from dependence to independence and finally to interdependence. So that's the whole framework, understanding that real change comes from the inside out by shifting your mental maps and building true habits to move along the path to effectiveness. It's definitely not a quick fix. It's a fundamental change in who you are. The foundation is now set. The only question left is, are you ready to start building? So today, we're going to break down the first 3 foundational habits for really taking control of your life. And look, this isn't about some new productivity hack. This is about winning the most important battle there is, the one inside your own head. All right, let's get into it. Let me just start by asking you this. Do you ever feel like you're just reacting all day? Just getting bounced around from one urgent thing to the next, like a pinball. It's that feeling of being a passenger in your own life. Well, this is all about how you get into the driver's seat. Okay, so this all comes down to a core idea called the private victory. It's actually a pretty simple principle. Before you can ever be effective out there, leading a team, building a business, whatever, you first have to get good at leading yourself. Real, lasting change always starts from the inside out. And that leads us straight into habit 1, taking the wheel. This is all about embracing the principle of responsibility. It's that huge kind of freeing realization that you are not just a product of your circumstances. Your past, your job, your mood, they don't get the final say. You do. You're the one in charge here. I want you to think about it like this. Something happens to you, right? That's the stimulus. And then you react. That's the response. But between those two things, there's a little gap, a space. And inside that space, that's where your power is. It's your freedom to choose. The whole game is just to make that space a little wider, even for a split second, to just pause, take a breath, and then choose. That's it. That's where all the growth is. And you can literally hear the difference in people's language. Reactive language is full of, I have to do this, or there's nothing I can do, which basically makes you a victim. But proactive language, it shifts to, I choose to, and I will. And believe me, this is way more than just a word game. It's a fundamental change in how you see the world and your place in it. Okay, so you've taken the wheel. Awesome. You're in control. But where are you actually going, right? Because being proactive without a clear destination just means you get nowhere a lot faster. And that's exactly why habit 2 is all about creating your personal blueprint. It's the principle of vision. And this whole habit, really, it boils down to one single, incredibly powerful idea. Everything is created twice. First, it's created in the mind. Then, it's created in the real world. Think about it. A house doesn't just appear. It starts as a blueprint, a detailed plan. A successful business starts with a vision, a business plan. Well, guess what? Your life works the exact same way. So, just like an architect would never let a construction crew start without a blueprint, you have to design the life you want in your mind before you can ever hope to build it in reality. So the real question you have to ask yourself is this. Are you actually the one writing your blueprint? Because here's the thing, if you don't, you're leaving a vacuum. And that vacuum, it's gonna get filled. It'll be filled by other people's priorities, by default programming from your childhood, by just circumstances. So defining your personal mission, what you're all about and where you're headed, it's absolutely non-negotiable. All right, so you're the driver, you've got a destination. Now we get to the really important part. How do you actually navigate the path day to day with all the chaos life throws at you? This brings us to habit 3 and the principle of execution. Now, this matrix is such a powerful way to see where your time is actually going. It breaks everything down based on 2 simple questions. Is it urgent and is it important?
Now, most of us, if we're being honest, live in quadrants I and III. We're constantly putting out fires, dealing with crises, and responding to interruptions. It feels really busy, and you might even feel productive. But honestly, it's a trap.
Because the real secret, the key to a truly effective life, is living in Quadrant 2. These are the things that are super important, but they're not screaming for your attention right now. And because they're not urgent, they're so easy to put off. But this is where the magic happens. We're talking about the big stuff, like planning for the future, working to prevent problems before they even start, taking the time to learn a new skill, or really investing in the important relationships in your life. These things almost never feel urgent, but they're the activities that give you the biggest return on your time, by far. So there you have it. That's the framework for achieving that private victory. And understanding these ideas is one thing, but putting them into practice, well, that's the whole ballgame. So let's talk about your very first move. You can see how it all just flows together, right? First, you take the wheel. You accept that you're in charge. Second, you choose the destination. You define what success actually looks like for you. And third, you follow your compass. You organize your daily life around what truly matters. It's a complete, powerful system for mastering yourself. So as we wrap up, I just want to leave you with this one simple question. Forget about everything else for just a minute and ask yourself, based on what's truly important to you, what is one single Quadrant 2 action you could take today? That's it. That's where the journey really begins. All right, let's dive in. We're about to break down a framework that can seriously change the game in your professional and personal life. We're going to move way past just getting along and into the space of real, honest-to-goodness breakthrough collaboration. I mean, you've been there, right? You're in a meeting, and it feels less like a team brainstorm and more like a boxing match. That frustration, that feeling of butting heads, it almost always comes from this default competitive mindset we all fall into. But what if there's a better way to play the game? So here's the goal. It's not about winning over other people. The real aim is what we call a public victory. Think of it as a state of effective interdependence, where what you create together is so much bigger and better than what any one of you could have done alone. So where does this journey begin? It all starts with the first habit. And it's a big one, learning to think win-win. Now, this isn't some clever tactic you pull out in a negotiation. No, this is a total paradigm shift. It's a completely different way of looking at every interaction you have, one that puts mutual benefit first. So what does win-win actually mean? Well, at its core, it's the belief that success is not a zero-sum game. It comes from an abundance mindset, this idea that there's more than enough to go around for everybody. You stop seeing a single fixed pie that you have to fight for your slice of. Instead, you start thinking, hey, how can we work together to bake a much, much bigger pie? And to really get win-win, you've got to see the alternatives. Most of the world operates on win-lose, right? The classic, for me to win, you have to lose. Then there's its opposite, lose-win, where you're basically a doormat, always giving in to keep the peace. Even worse is lose-lose. That's the downward spiral where everyone just wants to drag each other down. But look at that last one, win-win or no deal. That's a whole other level. It means you're so committed to a mutual solution that if you can't find one, you both agree to walk away with no hard feelings, preserving the relationship. Now that's powerful. And here's why this all matters. Here's the bottom line. A win-win mindset is the only thing that builds the kind of deep trust you need for real, long-term collaboration. Without that trust, sure, you can cooperate, you can work on the same project, but you'll never get that creative magic. With trust, you move from just cooperating to creating something truly new together. Okay, so you've bought into the win-win mindset. That's huge. But how do you actually do it? Especially when things get tense and you disagree? Well, that brings us right to our next habit, which is all about the core skill you need to make it work: empathy. And it all starts with listening. This quote just hits you right between the eyes, doesn't it? Seriously, think about the last conversation you were in. Were you really, truly listening to understand where the other person was coming from? Or were you just waiting for them to take a breath so you could jump in with your point? Yeah, that's the default for most of us. Just look at this ladder of listening. We've all been on every single rung. At the bottom, you've got ignoring, not even trying. Then there's pretending, oh yeah, the classic, right, yeah, while you're mentally a million miles away.
Then you move up to selective listening, where you only perk up when you hear something you care about. Even attentive listening, where you're focused on the words, isn't the final goal. The very top, where the magic happens, is empathic listening. That's when you're listening with your ears, your eyes, and your gut to really get the whole picture, the feeling behind the words. The guiding rule here is actually incredibly simple, but it's profound. Diagnose before you prescribe. I mean, think about it. You'd never trust a doctor who wrote you a prescription before even asking what your symptoms are, right? It's the exact same thing in our relationships. We can't jump in with solutions before we've taken the time to deeply, truly understand the problem from the other person's point of view. So, this is where it all comes together. When you take that foundation, that win-win mindset, and you combine it with the incredible skill of empathic listening, you unlock the third and final habit, synergy. This is the ultimate payoff. This is where creative cooperation is truly born. So, quick pop quiz. What does 1 + 1 equal? I know, it's 2. That's what we all learned in school. But when we're talking about human collaboration, that answer is just plain wrong. In synergy, 1 + 1 equals 3 or 10 or 100. Synergy is simply the idea that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. It's that incredible moment when the solution you create together is better than anything either of you could have come up with on your own. You're not compromising. You're creating a brand new third alternative. So how you get there? This stuff doesn't just happen by accident. There's a recipe. First, you have to genuinely value differences. You have to see someone else's different perspective as a huge strength, not a threat to your idea. Second, you have to be willing to suspend your ego, to be open to a new possibility that's better than your original plan. And of course, it all rests on that bedrock of trust that you built with the first 2 habits. Okay, let's put a bow on all this. Let's map out the entire journey so you have a clear, actionable path to completely transform your interactions, starting right now. It really boils down to this simple 3-step journey. First, it starts with the mindset, a rock-solid commitment to think win-win. Second, you develop the skill. You practice empathetic listening to truly understand. And third, you get the amazing result. You combine that mindset and that skill to create synergy, outcomes that are wildly better than anything you could have done alone. So I'll leave you with a question to chew on. Think about your life right now. Which relationship, maybe with a coworker, a partner, a client, could be totally transformed this week if you just started with a win-win mindset? Which single conversation could you change right now just by deciding you're not leaving until you both feel like you've won? All right, let's dive right in. Have you ever had that feeling where you're just working harder and harder but getting less and less done? Yeah, you're definitely not alone. Today, we're going to talk about a really powerful idea called sharpen the saw. It sounds simple, but trust me, it holds the key to sustainable performance, and we're about to break down exactly how it works. So let's start with a question that probably hits pretty close to home. Why does working harder eventually stop working? You know the feeling, right? You're putting in all the hours, you're pushing yourself to the absolute limit, but your progress just stalls. You feel completely drained, but you're still stuck in the exact same spot. So what's going on? Why does that just work harder strategy always seem to fail us in the end? Well, there's actually a name for this whole thing. It's called the downward spiral. And look, this isn't about bad luck, and it's definitely not about a lack of talent. It's the direct, totally predictable result of neglecting the single most important asset you have, which is you. This boils down to a really simple, almost brutally simple principle. Without renewal, your performance is going to decline. It's just inevitable. Think about it like this. It's like trying to chop down a huge tree with a really dull saw. I mean, you can push and sweat and work as hard as you possibly can, but you're just going to burn yourself out, and your actual effectiveness is just going to plummet. But okay, here's the good news. There is a way out of that spiral, and the antidote, it's something called the principle of renewal. Now, this isn't just about, taking a quick 5-minute break before you dive right back into burning out. No, this is a complete shift in your mindset. It's all about continuous improvement. And really getting what continuous improvement means is absolutely key here. It's the idea of regularly investing in yourself. See, the goal isn't just passive rest. It's not just about stopping. It's about actively making yourself better, enhancing your capabilities for the long haul. A great way to think about it is you're building a better you, not just trying to patch up a tired one. So what does this renewal thing actually look like day to day?
Well, the whole framework is built around 4 key dimensions, and it's a balanced, kind of holistic approach. Because let's face it, we're complex systems, right? Every single part of us needs its own kind of maintenance.
Okay, let's break this down because this is really the heart of the whole thing. First up, you've got the physical dimension. This is all about taking care of your body. Good food, enough sleep, getting some exercise. This is basically your energy engine. Then there's the mental dimension. This is about keeping your mind sharp, by reading, maybe learning a new skill, or even just setting aside time to plan things out. Next, we have the social and emotional side. This means investing real time and energy into your relationships, practicing empathy, and just connecting with people. And last but not least, the spiritual dimension. And this is all about connecting with your core values, your purpose. Maybe that's through meditation or journaling, or even just spending some quiet time in nature. The most important thing to remember is that all of these are connected. If you neglect one, believe me, the whole system gets thrown out of whack.
So, what's the big payoff for all this work? I mean, why should you carve out time for renewal when you're already feeling swamped? Well, the prize here isn't just feeling less tired, though that's nice. It's about unlocking consistent high-level performance. It's about getting to a place that's actually truly sustainable. See, the ultimate goal here isn't some short burst of frantic productivity. It's about sustainable, long-term effectiveness. This is how you build a career, and honestly, a life, where you can consistently show up and be at your best without constantly hitting a wall. This is how you play the long game and actually win. We get so obsessed with the output, right? Produce more, do more, check more boxes. But we completely forget to maintain the engine that's doing all that producing. The real mindset shift, the absolute game changer, is right here. Focus on building your capacity to produce, not just on the production itself. It all comes back to taking the time to sharpen the tool. So, let's just do a quick recap of the path forward. Step 1, you've got to be honest with yourself and recognize when your performance is starting to dip. Step 2, you have to consciously embrace renewal as the answer. Step 3, make those balanced investments across all 4 dimensions we talked about: the physical, mental, social, and spiritual. And what's step 4? Well, that's the result. That's when you achieve real, sustainable growth and effectiveness. And that brings us right here to our final thought. I want to leave you with a question to really think about. Right now, in your life, as you consider those 4 dimensions, your body, your mind, your heart, your spirit, which one of your tools is the dullest? Where do you need to do some sharpening? We live in a world just full of fleeting trends and, let's be honest, a lot of self-help fads. So how does one single philosophy manage to stay so influential for decades? It's a really interesting puzzle, right? Today, we're going to unpack the enduring legacy of Stephen Covey's principles and find out exactly why they've stood the test of time. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. One of the most influential leadership books of the 20th century. Whoa. That's not just some nice praise. That is a monumental claim. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Out of all the thousands of leadership books out there, what makes this one so special? What did it get so incredibly right? And that, right there, is the core question we're trying to answer. Why does this philosophy last, while so many others just fade away? What's the secret sauce? Well, it turns out the answer is all about its foundation, and that's exactly where we're going to start. All right. Section 1, the foundation of timelessness, the secret to its longevity. And look, the secret here isn't some clever marketing trick. It all comes down to a really fundamental choice: building on timeless principles instead of just chasing after temporary trends. So think about it like this. On one side, you've got your trend-based approach. The quick fixes, the surface-level techniques. It's kind of like slapping a fresh coat of paint on a crumbling wall. Sure, it looks good for a little while, but that deep underlying problem, it's still there. But then on the other side, you have the principle-based approach. This is all about building a solid foundation from the ground up, working with these universal laws of human effectiveness. It's a huge shift from asking, how do I look, to asking, who am I really? And what gives this whole philosophy so much power is how it weaves these different fields together. It takes psychology, understanding how our minds work, and combines it with ethics, our basic sense of right and wrong, and it throws in productivity science, the actual nuts and bolts of getting things done. This unified approach is why it's so much more than just a business tool or some simple self-help trick. It's really a holistic framework for your entire life. Okay, so we've established that the foundation is all about principles, not trends. That's solid. But what exactly is that foundation supporting? Well, it's holding up this huge idea called true effectiveness. And let me tell you, it's about way more than just checking things off a to-do list.
So, what does true effectiveness actually mean? Well, it's the ability to get the results you want, but, and this is a big but, in a way that's both sustainable and aligned with your core principles. That word, sustainable, that's absolutely key. I mean, sure, anyone can pull an all-nighter to hit a deadline one time, but that's not a real system for success, right? And being aligned with principles just means you don't have to sell your soul or compromise who you are to get where you want to go. You can actually break this whole idea down into 3 pillars. A great way to think about it is like a 3-legged stool. The first leg? That's results. You've got to deliver, period. The second leg is relationships. You just can't succeed long-term by burning bridges. And that third leg is principles. You have to actually live in a way that lines up with your values. Now, what happens if you kick out any one of those legs? The whole stool just comes crashing down. True effectiveness, real success, needs all 3.
Okay, so achieving that perfect balance of results, relationships, and principles, that sounds awesome, right? But how do you actually do it? Well, the whole philosophy starts with accepting one fundamental, non-negotiable truth about growth. There are no shortcuts.
Just listen to this. You cannot skip habits. It's so simple, but so powerful. And it's not a suggestion. It's framed as like a law of nature. In our world today, with all the life hacks and the need for instant gratification, this idea is actually pretty radical. It's a powerful reminder that real, deep, lasting change just doesn't happen overnight. You can't just skip ahead to the finish line. Because here's the deal. Growth is sequential. It happens step by step. It's just like learning math, right? You would never, ever try to jump into calculus if you hadn't mastered algebra first. It just wouldn't work. Well, character development works the exact same way. Each habit you build is the foundation for the next, more complex one. Every single step prepares you for what's coming next.
And that brings us to the final, really crucial piece of the puzzle. Developing your character, it isn't a project with a deadline. It's not something you just complete. It's a lifelong journey. Now, that's not meant to sound discouraging. Actually, it's the opposite. It's incredibly liberating. All that pressure to be perfect right now, it's gone. The goal isn't to reach some imaginary finish line, but to just keep taking the next step on the path day after day. So, when you boil it all down, we've seen that this timeless idea of effectiveness is built on a solid foundation of principles. And that really leaves us with one final and maybe the most crucial question to think about. What principles are guiding your growth? What are those unshakable, non-negotiable laws that you're building your life on? Honestly, it might be the most important question you can ever ask yourself.